Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a review on these sketchbooks here. They're the Stillman Birn Premium Sketchbook in the softcover edition. Let's just jump right in. We'll go from my most favorite of the range to my least favorite, and I'll kind of break down what all of the different components are, what the main differences are, and why I like this range of sketchbook the most. All right, so this is the first one I'm going to talk about. It's my favorite of the four sketchbooks, and this one is the Beta series. Now, this one is not the first one out of the range that I tried. That one was actually the Delta, which I'll show you in a couple sketchbooks. But yeah, just through trying a few of the different ones, I've discovered that this is my favorite. So the basics of this sketchbook is that it's good for dry and wet media. It's considered an extra heavyweight paper at about 270 pounds, and it's a white cold press surface. Most of these sketchbooks, except for I'll tell you the one that doesn't have this, have 26 sheets, which is 52 pages. The sheets are the spread, the pages half of the spread. So you get a decent amount of space in here. It's good for, a medium-sized trip. If you're going for, a couple months, I would say bring one or two of these. If you're just going for a week or so, one is sufficient, unless you're painting and drawing several times a day, then you might want to consider bringing two of them. And they're all 3.5 by 5.5 inches, so really compact pocket size, which is one of the reasons that I love them as well. The Beta in particular has everything that I like from all of the other sketchbooks combined into one. So it's an extra heavyweight, so that means it has a very thick paper. You can kind of hopefully tell how thick it is, and it's great for not being able to see what you've done on the other side. The watercolor absorbs nicely, but it doesn't oversaturate the page. Of course, if you're using a lot of water, then you're gonna have some issues, but that would be the case with any watercolor paper. And it has enough of a texture to it that it grabs the color and will absorb it a lot faster than a smoother page would. So generally, I would see things like cold press, and I would not go for that because I don't like texture, but this is not really that textured. It just has a very slight texture. Not that like really indented cold press that some other brands do, because that's not what I go for. I go for a hot press or a smooth generally, but this ends up being equivalent to a lot of the hot press paper that I use in my own studio practice. That's basically the Beta Series 1, and I'll kind of touch back on it as we're going to compare it to the other ones. And the other thing to note is that the paper is a bright white, I would say, not just a white, but it has a very, clean white color where the other colors stand out really nicely against it, and the whites are very defined and white. I use white gel pen to add back in some details, but it's not as necessary with this one. All right, so that's the Beta. So this is the Zeta sketchbook, and it has pretty much the same aspects of the Beta. As all of them, it is a softcover edition. It's the 3.5 by 5.5, and this one again has the 52 pages and is an extra heavyweight and a white. I think it's doesn't end up being quite as white as the Beta, but it's still a nice bright white. The main difference with this one is it's very smooth. So it's considered a smooth surface, and it's very like hardly any texture at all, very smooth, which, for some media might be really good and might be the preferred texture for paper. But for watercolor, it it ends up kind of leaving a bit of a funny feel on the page. I felt that the paper broke down a little bit easier than the cold press paper did, so you weren't able to work with the page quite as long as you could with the Beta. And if you don't know what I mean by breakdown, it just means that the paper kind of pills a little bit and starts to get that rough texture. The other thing is the watercolor didn't dry as fast. Because the paper is a bit smoother, it doesn't have as much absorbency. So you're sitting someplace longer waiting for your page to dry, which if you're traveling while you're using this, that's not the ideal situation because you're wanting to be a little bit faster. You want to be able to pick up and move on a bit quicker. So yeah, that would be my main disappointment with this one, is just the texture of the paper. Everything else I love, the color, the weight of the page, yeah, just the texture. But it's still my second favorite out of all four, so still a quality sketchbook. And maybe your preference, if that's what you enjoy more with, is that very smooth paper. The third one I'm going to talk about is the Delta series sketchbook. This is actually the first one that I bought from the Stillman Birn line, and I thought that I had gone to heaven because it was everything that I was looking for in a sketchbook. Little did I know that life would get better with the Zeta and Beta, but still an amazing sketchbook. So it has everything the same as the Beta sketchbook. It's an extra heavyweight, a cold press surface, and same size, same everything else. The only difference with this one is that it has quite a yellow undertone. So I'll show you what the Beta looks like in comparison. So if you'll notice, this is a very bright white, and then you can see just how ivory, this is the color that they call it, is ivory. And it does really have that tone to it. You can just see how having the ivory underneath really affects areas that are supposed to be white. So obviously I left the page open here, and this cow's face was white in real life, and it ends up being this sort of tan ivory color. Yeah, so it really affects the coloring of the image. And I was able to put some highlights back in with white gel pen, which becomes a lot more necessary with this undercolor. So yeah, that is the only downside with this one really, which I prefer, obviously in sort of level of importance, I prefer the white coloring of the Zeta above the cold press texture of the Delta, so that's why it makes it my third favorite of all of these. And still a great quality sketchbook. If you prefer that ivory undertone, then maybe this is the one that you would want anyways. But yeah, again, I should say, like, I love all of these sketchbooks. It's just that the one is so amazing that it makes the other three sort of second, third, fourth place, right? But if I had just found any one of these and not known about all the other ones, then I just would have loved that one the most. So you can understand that all of these are, 10 out of 10 sketchbooks. It's just some of them are 11 out of 10, and all right, so for the last one, this is the Alpha sketchbook, and you can see I haven't repurchased it, and I probably won't unless it was absolutely the only one available, which is why I bought this one actually, because it was the only one available when I was looking. And I'll tell you why. So we'll look at the back of this one here to kind of get some of the stats on the Alpha sketchbook. So the Alpha is considered a heavyweight and not an extra heavyweight. That's the main reason why I don't like it as much, I should say. So it's 150 pounds for the page instead of 270. So it's, almost half as thin. and we'll get into that in a second. But it's also considered a white, and they call this a medium grain instead of a cold press. So it does end up being pretty comparable to the cold press. I'm not really sure why they changed that classification for this, but I'm sure someone who's watching this might know. So if you do know that, put that in the comments. This one, like I said, it is quite thin. So in comparison to the Zeta sketchbook, I'm not sure if you can really maybe tell, but it is just a lot thinner. So I can't really bend this. I can bend this quite easily. So I was really worried at first when I was using it that it was going to make life more difficult, but it held up pretty decently. You know, a lot of these blacks didn't, affect the next page. I was a bit worried about oversaturating the paper, which is really a big concern, especially when I got into these bigger pieces where I'm using a lot of water to do gradations and everything like this. It really did affect, you can see how buckled the page is, whereas the other ones, it takes a lot more a lot more water in order to buckle the page like this. And yeah, all of these places where I'm using a lot of water to do the sky really got affected. So then the biggest issue that I've had so far is in these two pictures here. So I was really struggling to get these angles and these lines correct. So I was drawing them and erasing them and drawing them and erasing them, not realizing that it was affecting this side so much. Like, you can really see that through the page. It's very evident. The other thing is when I use my binder clip, it digs into the paper here and it kind of ruined it. And it's done that in a couple other places as well. So this paper is it's just thinner. That's what it comes down to. And still great quality paper, still very usable. You just have to be a bit more careful. It doesn't take a beating quite like the thicker paper does. The benefit of having thinner paper, however, is that I'm about a third of the way through this at the moment. If it was one of the other sketchbooks, I'd be more like 2/3 of the way through, because you get about twice as many pages in here as the other ones. So that is the nice thing about it. But yeah, so that's basically it for Alpha. Not my ideal sketchbook. Again, if none of the other ones are available, I will buy this one. But out of the four, it's definitely my least favorite. And then that also gives you an idea of the Gamma and Epsilon, which are both the same weight of paper, but one is just the ivory and one is the smooth. So they have like, the Delta, Beta, Zeta, they have the comparable ones for all of them, just in the lighter page weight. So I'm not really keen to try those ones just because they have less of the things I want. So they're smooth or they're ivory, and they're also a lighter page weight. So not my ideal for those ones. Like I said, all of these are incredible sketchbooks. I recommend them. This is what I supply for people who are using my workshop, just because they're a very hardy sketchbook, and they're just pleasant to use, and very light and portable, so you don't have the hardcover that's kind of weighing you down, and they're small enough that they can fit in your backpack or in your purse as you're roaming around traveling, and the paper quality is just incredible. So I definitely recommend this for anyone who's looking for a sketchbook. It just depends on, if you want slight texture and white paper, which is the Beta, or you're wanting very smooth paper and white paper, which is the Zeta, or if you're wanting more pages and you don't really necessarily need to have that thick of a paper, then go for the Alpha or the Epsilon or the Gamma. Those might be the right choice for you in your practice. Or if you're wanting a textured cold press with an ivory finish, then maybe that's for you. So there's something different and positive for each of these sketchbooks. And each of them would work differently for a different practice or a different media that you in your own travel sketching practice would use. So maybe the Beta, even though it's my favorite, may not be your favorite. Who knows? But hopefully this helps you make a little bit more of an informed decision when you're looking online at some of these things, if you haven't ever seen them in person, or because they are all wrapped up in the store, it's hard to get an idea of what the page actually feels like and looks like and why you would choose one over the other. Just from the description on the back, it's a bit challenging to know that. So hopefully this helps you in your own decision, figuring out which sketchbook you'd like to use. And thank you so much for watching. If there's anything else you'd like me to review, I'm not going to just buy things to review them, but if it's something that I use in my art practice or something I come across and I'm interested in, then I'd be happy to know if you'd like to see reviews on that. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!